will take my coat off. Okay? Y'all don't mind that, do you? Good. Good. I'm wearing long sleeves, so my hairy arms will not show. Because I'll tell you the truth, I wasn't feeling so fresh when I woke up this morning. All through the night, I tossed and turned. I had the hot spells. I had the cold chills. I had the queasiness. I felt all clammy. And it wasn't because I knew I had to preach today. Or was it? No, I've done this before. And I got through it okay. And y'all were very kind and supportive and encouraging to me. So that's why I had no problem saying when Brother Danny asked me, would I mind preaching again? And I said, sure, I'll be glad to. So here it is, for better or worse, the fact that I'm not feeling so great. I know Brother Sammy has been up here before, so if I should have to keel over, Sammy, my notes are up here. You just come and you'll kick me out of the way and take over, all right? The tape will explain everything that went on. I'm going to ask us to look at two very familiar passages of Scripture, one coming from Luke and the other one coming from Matthew. You see in your bulletin where they are. The first will be from Luke chapter 2, verses 15 to 20. And then the other one will be Matthew chapter 2, verses 11 to 12. And I'm going to ask, if you are able, would you stand as a response to God and honor Him? And I will read these passages of Scripture, beginning with the Luke passage. Starting at Luke 2, verses 15. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us. And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph, and the babe, lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all they that heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things, and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told unto them. And coming from Matthew chapter 2, beginning at verse 11, and when they, this is the Magi, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. Thank you. Please be seated. The end of December is one of the few times that we humans are prone to reflect upon the past. From Time Magazine to the History Channel, we are encouraged to think, even if for a moment, to reflect backwards into the history that we call our lives. It prepares us with some welling nostalgia to sing Auld Lang Syne amid the dropping of balloons on January the 1st. But looking back, I want us to note two general ways to look at history. The Greeks, from whom we have inherited most of our worldview, saw time as linear, much as if you drew a straight line and marked this end with the past. Did I do that right? Yes, I have. Yes, I have. All right. And you would travel on a progression, and you would denote with increments hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries, millennia, until you get to the other end, and you would mark that as now. Time, they thought, progressed as an ever-flowing river from the headwaters of creation toward the ocean of infinity, and every moment on that river is a pilgrimage of progression, which can never be repeated, so that each moment is therefore unique, and it serves as the basis for our you only go around once kind of attitude. And it's also why we believe in progression. Through innovation, we see humanity improving upon the past. New technology, wiser leadership, about that one, a more just and comfortable society. History is like the steps on an ever-rising stairwell to infinity. That sounded almost like a rock song there. Ever progressing forward. Yet other cultures had a different understanding of events altogether. From the Chinese to the Mayans, they thought that time was the ever-turning wheel. Wherever one was on that wheel, ultimately events would roll around again. And this mindset was based on the cycle of the seasons. Indeed, looking at the earth, one could see with almost machine-like predictability how the stars and the planets had reoccurring paths. And if it was true for these great celestial bodies, then why not for we mere mortals as well? Theologically, it leads to kind of ideas of reincarnation, but it also encourages ideas of Stoic fatalism. For like the writer of Ecclesiastes wrote, there is nothing new under the sun. Regardless of effort, humanity lives on in an ever-revolving circle. Wherever you started on this spinning journey, the world is bound to come back to the same spot over and over again. Of course, both have some truth. We can't go back and redo yesterday. 2014 isn't going to come back, and we are going to move forward into 2015. On the other hand, we know that as the post-Christmas winter plays out its chilly days, spring will come, followed by summer, and then fall, and then another Christmas will cycle around again. But as we worship the God who created time, as we sit just a few days shy of 2015, let's not limit ourselves to an either-or thinking on time. Let me propose to you a third way to think of life's journey, combining both. Some of us use the time between Christmas and New Year to read. Perhaps if you were fortunate, you got a book for Christmas and you want to read it. Some of you say, book, what's that? Or as the holiday gives us a slower, more vacation-like pace, we glean a few hours to pick up that novel that's been collecting dust on the shelf, and we try to finish it off. Back in the day when I was in college, and books were still written on paper back then, I kept a cheap paperback Stephen King novel on my desk. I grabbed it off the campus recycle table at the end of the semester, and I would devour it as mind candy. Something fun and unlike the volumes of mind-dulling academic trivia required for reading during the semester. And invariably, I would be 2/3 of the way through the book when the next semester started, and all my reading time was demanded elsewhere. So, I placed that novel back on my shelf with a paper clip. Visual aids today. Zoom in on that, Brother Keith. That is a paper clip I'm holding up. Noting the exact page at which I stopped. The book would go untouched through the semester, but now and then I would look at it and I would lust for the next break when I could take, my leave away from texts on religion and the pieces of glass rubbed on piano wire and folks calling it music. Do they still do that, Dr. Sharon? I remember that 20th century stuff, and man, I could have wrote something like that, but that's another story altogether. I would long to return to the dark, macabre New England, smaller, sinister towns where things seem to happen at Castle Rock. But seeing the bookmark, I was reminded of where I was in the story, and I would long to return to it. My Bible in this hymnal has a bookmark in it. You see it there. It's nothing fancy. It's just a black piece of fabric, but it tells me where I need to be. It tells me where I'm going to go, and it tells me how far I've come. Do you have a book half finished? I'll bet somewhere in your house, protruding from each of these books that you seem to care about, is some sort of bookmark to remind you where you paused. A bookmark shows me how far in the story I've managed to read, and it's a statement of unfinished business. And all I can say is thank God for bookmarks. You see, while a bookmark may remind me of what I've not completed, it also tells me how far I've come. And thanks to the bookmark, I don't have to start over. I don't lose my place. In the progression of the book, it tells me where I need to return to continue on my journey. And if you'll allow the analogy, the book is like the timeline, with each page following the next. But the bookmark is like a circle. It tells me where I have to return, where I must be cycling back to an exact spot after a journey away. All of us just finished making what we figuratively call the Advent journey. We spent 4 weeks in preparation for the coming of the Christ child into our weary world. And during those weeks, we journeyed away from the routine, the mundane, the average world. We left behind our meetings and our paperwork, our ditches to be dug and our leaves to be raked. Instead, we rearranged the house. We climbed up into the attic to pull out the ornaments or decorations, or we sent our children up into the attic. We spent large chunks of time getting the tree up and hanging lights. We spent even larger chunks of time with the marriage counselor, debating the merits of a real versus artificial tree, or gaudy colored lights, which is my personal favorite, versus the gold and white standard. We spent entire evenings getting cards addressed and mailed. We spent hours upon hours trudging through the mall or online shopping for gifts. We bought colorful wrapping paper and took time to transform them into crafted, artistic jewels, only to see them ripped to shreds the moment they were placed in the hands of the gift recipient. Some of you even traveled hundreds of miles to visit with family and friends. Some of you probably traveled hundreds of miles to get away from family and friends. I don't know what's going on in your life. In general, though, all of us totally disturbed the flow of the ongoing day-to-day rhythm of everyday living. For weeks, we've lived in the social chaos of parties and travel and shopping and decorations. And now that it's over, more than one of us is likely to be longing for a return to the routine, the mundane, the ordinary time of predictable living. Bluntly, you put a bookmark in life in early December, and you can't wait to get back to where you started again. Luke and Matthew both tell us of lives that are interrupted with the advent of Christ. Mary and Joseph, obviously, had their lives disturbed, and they had to leave the confines of Nazareth to journey to Bethlehem. The wise men left their eastern homes to journey into Palestine, spending time, energy, and fortunes to seek out the Messiah and worship him. Likewise, the shepherds, rattled by the angel's message, left their sheep herds to go and see what had come to pass with the birth of Christ. When God's Son enters into our world, it has a way of knocking us off stride, interrupting our routine, and leading us into places that we wouldn't ordinarily go. Simply when Jesus comes into our lives, things get changed, and we will go to exceptional lengths like the shepherds and the Magi to find him and worship him. And on one hand, once you've had that encounter, life is never the same. Any of us who have had our souls transformed by the love, grace, and mystery of God's gift in the manger understand that. To be embraced by the Spirit of the Holy One revealed in Jesus is to have our souls shaken, not stirred, the priorities of our world reordered, and become different, almost like a new person, or as the evangelicals would say, born again. And falling on our knees at the manger, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and nothing is ever quite the same again. Yet we should note that in the life of every person that I mentioned in Scripture, there is a moment to return to what was. Mary and Joseph ultimately go back to Nazareth to run the carpenter shop, raise a home, and run a family. The Magi avoid the evil of Herod and slip out of town to return to Babylon and Persia. And as I read a bit before from the Gospel of Luke, after the shepherds found the Holy Family, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds were saying. The shepherds returned to their herds, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it had been told unto them. It's interesting when you stop and think about it. They encounter the Christ, but they all return to where they had started. They worship God, but end up going back to where they had left off. They have their world blown apart by stars and angels and the Holy Child, but they return to the routine business of everyday living. Like returning to the bookmark, they go back to living where they had left off. And so do we. It's the Sunday after Christmas. We, like Moses, Elijah, Jacob, Isaiah, the wise men, and the shepherds have met God face to face. And we're different because of it. We bear the marks of that encounter forever because of our forgiven lives and our loving attitudes. And we marvel in the darkest nights of our souls that we know the light of the wondrous star and the brightness of the angel host. And so we have journeyed to Bethlehem, and we have worshipped the Christ. But now, it's time to go home. It's time to pack up the tree, put the ornaments away, stow away the lights until next year when we use them again. It's time to flip life open to the bookmark and resume the story. And return home we must. For one thing, the human psyche isn't designed to maintain the intensity of the Christmas holiday. But more important is the God found in Bethlehem is also the God to be worshipped and followed in Nazareth, in Persia, in Jericho, and Rome, in New York, as well as Raleigh and Wilmington, and yes, even right here in Chadbourn and Whiteford. It's time for you and I to get back to the 9-to-5 world. We'll need to take the car in for the oil change and vacuum the carpets. We'll have kids to bundle up for school, reports to be written for work, and bills that have to be paid. We, like the shepherds, need to get back to tending sheep. But because we've been to Bethlehem, we'll be different. And we hope and pray so will our world. And it shows an interesting paradox of time. You see, Jesus comes into history, and yet he comes again every year. Jesus was born of Mary and laid in Bethlehem's manger some 2,000 years ago. And yet his coming is experienced just as did the shepherds when humanity is open to receiving him. Christ came to a poor and bewildered family 20 centuries ago in the past, and yet he comes today into every heart receptive to receiving him. And in your own soul, Jesus came once to transform you, and you were claimed by the name Christian. And yet he comes again and again and again to remold your heart into the shape of his grace-giving will. Christmas is linear. It happened once long ago. Christmas is cyclical. It happens every year. And the effects of Christmas are felt in how we live out our routines the rest of the year. As the circle of 2015 rolls, will it be any different from all the other previous years? Perhaps. You see, the difference of this coming year will not be in how we get ready for the next Advent. It will be in how we enact the Spirit of Christ through the cold winds of January, as well as the oppressive humidity of August. It will be how our lives are different amid others who are living the routine of our working lives, at the office, or school, or at home. Will we be more compassionate, more generous, more forgiving, more Christ-like? Will we strive to work for justice and live out humble servanthood? Will people be able to see Christ living in us as easily on Groundhog Day and Labor Day as they do on Christmas Eve? Peter Gomes said it well. Christ's presence has hallowed all that we are. And by his grace, the world and we can never be quite the same again. Therefore, we begin again, that in leaving the manger, we may embrace the world for his sake and ours. So go on, get out of here. Christmas is over. Go back to where you started this Advent journey. But as you go, be like the shepherds. Spread the word concerning what has been told you about this child, and all who hear it will be amazed at what you and the shepherds say to them, and return to your day-to-day lives, glorifying and praising God for all the things that you have heard and seen, just as you have been told. Our hymn of invitation is hymn 567. Another year is dawning. We will be singing this to the tune of the church's One Foundation. I will be standing down here.